Hello, and welcome back to Star Wars Minute. It's the daily podcast where we analyze, scrutinize, and celebrate the Star Wars movies 1 minute at a time. I'm Pete the Retailer from PeteTheRetailer.com.
I'm Alex Robinson. My website is alexrobinson.fun.
And I'm Greg Wyshynski. I'm the Senior National Hockey League writer for ESPN, and I also occasionally dabble in writing about the great sport, is it a sport, of professional wrestling.
Yes, it's definitely sports entertainment, and I am entertained.
Yeah. I once interviewed The Undertaker. He did his first interview with me talking about his gimmick, like as himself. That was a real thrill in life that he he hadn't really done that before, and then he did it with me. And I was like, this is kind of awkward.
He was like, I'm not really undead. Like, oh.
Yeah.
Were you scared to meet him?
I did it over the phone, luckily. I would have been scared to meet him for sure. Yeah. I'm like, so wait, you're not dead? He's like, no. I'm like, are you even a biker? He's like, yeah. I'm like, oh, okay. So I guess it's like half real.
Yeah. That's wrestling for you.
Yeah. A little bit of reality sprinkled in there. Well, hey, speaking of people that may or may not be dead, let's talk about minute 124, Star Wars Episode 9, The Rise of Skywalker. 124, it starts with Ben Solo holding Rey's corpse, and it ends with Ben Solo holding Rey's corpse. Checking my notes, that seems about right. So there's a whole long minute of longing and holding and staring and and he I have a question and then an odd thing to bring up.
And I also have a question, so okay. I'll go after you.
Okay. All right.
Assuming it's not the same question.
I don't know. My question is the force in your abdomen? Because he's kind of like holding her, and he's like, I know what I'm going to do. I remember she did that force healing thing. I'll do that. And he just puts his hand like on her tum-tum there, and like, is that where the force starts with?
Yeah, no, it's where all her shut down, like her space spleen or space pancreas, like all shut down, and he's fixing it in a way that is completely ripped off from the Matrix and the way that Neo fixes Trinity.
I think he's just doing it because that's what when Rey healed him, she put her hand on his lower abdomen, and that healed him. So maybe he's just like, that must be how you do it.
Right.
So I guess the no prize answer would be they're in a dyad, so he knows exactly where to touch her to restore her force, blah, 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 blah. It's a dyad.
Okay.
Yeah.
Dyad, the force. Those are the two answers, the blanket answers. Yeah. Dyad, force.
Yeah.
Okay.
It's for her.
Well, you're supposed to say force.
Right, it's force. That's where her reboot button is. It's subtle. You couldn't hear it on the soundtrack, but she actually made the Apple reboot noise in her tummy when he pressed it.
It's right under her rib cage a little bit, so it doesn't you don't bump into it too often, but it's there. You can get
that leads to
a lot of people can't find it.
Yeah.
Does CPR or mouth-to-mouth resuscitation exist in the Star Wars universe? Apparently not. He doesn't know it, at least. He doesn't try it or start pound it on her chest or whatever. Right. Or the Heimlich maneuver. Does the Heimlich maneuver, you think, exist in Star Wars?
The Holdo maneuver does.
Probably have a droid that does it. There's a droid in every dining area.
Right. First aid for choking. The poster is a droid. It just comes out.
Whoa.
They would literally need several thousand posters for every alien body type on how to do the Heimlich maneuver. You can't do the Heimlich maneuver on a Wookiee the same way you would Jabba, right? Obviously. So you need to know. You need to have specific posters for every species.
I think for Jabba, you have to do the Heimlich maneuver on all four of the puppeteers that are inside of it
right, yeah.
for it to work. Don't forget the tail.
Right.
A lot of people forget the tail when you're doing the Heimlich. So
you got to get the guy.
Put your arms around him. Just get your arms around. No, around him.
You're just kind of like
so I guess the Heimlich would not exist because there's just too many, and probably CPR too. Same problem. They have hearts
CPR
all over the place.
Which droid is that?
He's a little round guy.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't know. Plus, I don't know what that. We have Bacta, right? Bacta solves everything. Maybe we should have had some Bacta spread.
That's their motto.
Bacta solves everything.
So, Alex, was that in fact your question?
About whether or not there was CPR or anything.
Yes.
Two, yeah.
Yeah. Well, this leads me into my. No, it's not a question. It's an interesting thing. This jogged my memory once I saw this part because I was like, wait a minute. Did I not, in my Star Wars research at one point, did I not accidentally stumble across a group of people who were somehow, I'm not going to say deluded, but somehow they have convinced themselves that by the end of this movie, Rey is pregnant with the child of Ben Solo. And I was like, is that not? Because when he touches her abdomen here, I was like, oh, wait, that like, is that part of their evidence here? And then I went doing a little bit of Googling. If you start typing, is Rey and the letter P, and maybe this is just me, and I'm giving people an insight into my search algorithm habits or whatever. But if I type is Rey and the letter P, is Rey pregnant comes up first, then is Rey Palpatine's granddaughter, like after that. So it's popular enough that people are just like, and they're asking questions about it. And I think part of it, remember the beads that he grabs from her neck through the dyad are fertility beads.
Bees?
Right. Why are we spending so much money on whistles? Fertility bees and plan B, just in case it doesn't. But and they're like, in theory, they wouldn't have to be together because of their dyad, the connection through the Force. They move things between space. And so there's some people who are just like, wait a minute, this seems like maybe by the end, and then people have even written, well, obviously, unsurprisingly, people have written fan fiction. But I like the main answer to the question. It was like, was Rey pregnant in Rise of Skywalker? The main answer is like, there's nothing to suggest in any of the cinematic language framing at the end of Skywalker that Rey is pregnant. But there are been just people have made kind of fan edited photos. They wrote a story. There's Zane Skywalker. He's the son of Ben Solo and Rey Palpatine.
It's pronounced Zany.
Zany Skywalker.
So to follow this logic, you're saying since they can pass objects through great distances, because they are, of course, a dyad, we are assuming that would include Ben Solo's ejaculate.
Or maybe it's even just beyond that. It's just like cells or something like...
I'm going to argue in favor because I like it, actually. Believe it or not, I like it.
You like what Greg just said, or you like the whole theory in general?
The whole theory in general.
Once you get to not to get too blue and change our rating on this, but like the idea that like they can move stuff through and like all of a sudden just like unsuspecting Rey just gets stuff delivered to her that she doesn't want is pretty. I'm not happy about that.
It's a little problematic element to this, I think, that we're dancing around. Yeah, for sure. See, when you went into this thing, Pete, I thought you were going to say that like his hand on her stomach made some sort of like immaculate conception through the Force.
That's what I think it is.
What I was saying,
which we've also seen. Yeah.
That's what I like about it is that the last episode ends with a woman being impregnated and there being no father, the same way Shmi Skywalker in the first episode was in a similar boat. So who knows? Maybe she had a dyad, some dyad person came over to her and was like, wow. So yeah, and although I agree that the film language to me doesn't suggest that she is, there's nothing in this which contradicts it to me, and I can see it being a way as a future storyline if they wanted to take advantage of it.
Well, yeah, that's there's a unsurprisingly, so some of this lives on Reddit, but that's they're saying, oh well, like so if she's pregnant with Kylo Ren or Ben Solo's child, which happens when she heals him with the Force, because as we read and heard about, when that is going on, that's like a Force transfer. She's transferring some of her Force to heal the serpent. She's transferring some of it to heal Kylo Ren when he becomes Ben Solo. Right. And so this could be the same thing where he's transferring, all right, his Force, his life essence is going there and then manifesting itself. Yeah, then it would be a good kind of, poetry. It rhymes to be then Anakin's, what is that? It skips a generation? It's like Anakin, then Luke and Leia, and then Ben, so it's 2 generations. Oh no, then he would be the other, I don't know.
Yeah.
It would have been the perfect way to end the film. She's like, what's your name? And she's like, Rey Skywalker. And then she immediately pukes in a bucket. And then they just cut to the credits.
Yeah.
And you're like, oh, what's that? Morning sickness.
It feels like she should say Rey Solo at that point, right? She shouldn't say Rey Skywalker. She should probably say Rey Solo. So.
Although I like, who was to name Rey Skywalker, pukes in a bucket, and then cut to Statler and Waldorf being like, tell me about it. You know.
I like that. So we know Rey, they say Rey is going to come back in another movie.
Mm-hmm.
So since she is now dead, is it going to be like a weekend at Bernie's type thing where Kylo Ren's going to be like carrying her around? You know, like,
well, there's a perfectly good like body puppeteering rig back there that, or maybe it blew up or got crushed or something.
Well, I wanted to ask you, like, are we have this minute? We got another minute this week. When are we discussing the eventuality of Rey's predicament? This episode or next episode? Because it kind of starts here.
By the eventuality of Rey's predicament, you mean her pregnancy?
I mean her resurrection. Spoiler.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
It kind of. I mean, she's still kind of out of it here up until the very beginning of the next minute, I think. I mean, okay. Granted, we don't have a lot to talk about here, so if you wanted to jump ahead, I wouldn't complain. But
I have a question.
Go ahead.
Oh yeah, Alex, how's the question? Yes, you in the back.
It's established that heaven, at least hell, exists in the Star Wars universe. So can we reasonably assume that heaven also exists? And if so, is Rey on her way up to heaven when she gets pulled back down into her body? Is she on her way to heaven right now at this moment in the movie? Or is she standing there like a ghost looking on as this all is going on, you know?
Well, okay. So that speaks to
because then she'd go, she'd see her family, and she'd meet Palpatine again up in heaven because he was her grandfather. So,
is she dead? Is she dead, or is she just really injured? Is the question. Like, we know that you can do this Force Healy thing to someone who's like real banged up, but is he literally resurrecting the dead here? Is the question.
Resurrect dead.
I would say
Jupiter.
Yes.
Okay. So if we say he's resurrecting the dead, let's just get into it. Yeah, let's just get into it.
Okay.
Having him save her life through the Force closes the Anakin loop in a very poetic way. We now find out definitively that the dark side never actually held the secrets for overcoming death. It was all Anakin fell for it. And he fell for it in a way that eventually cost him the love of his life. And what we see here, quite poetically, is Kylo Ren rejecting the dark side, becoming Ben Solo again, turning to the light, and bringing his loved one back from the dead while sacrificing himself. Because the whole key of this entire thing, the entire resurrecting your loved one thing, is self-sacrifice. So while Anakin was chasing this idea of resurrecting Padme so they could stay together, he missed the whole thing, which is that they could never stay together. One life has to be exchanged for another, and that is the true sacrifice. And you know, once Ben turned back to the light, he sacrificed himself to bring her back from the dead, and it becomes a really beautiful, tidy way to tie up one of the overarching stories in Star Wars, which is Anakin's desperate search to save his loved one, and lo and behold, his grandson figured it out.
And I like two other things in that it, ironically, a Palpatine is brought back to life at the end of the movie. So it
right.
ties up with Palpatine being revived at the beginning of the movie. Now we have a second Palpatine, and the irony
Palpatine has in fact returned. Exactly. Yeah.
Palpatine has come back from the dead, but it's not the Palpatine that everyone expected it to be. So
right.
Yeah, I like it.
Yeah.
And also the dead speak, because she at the end she's a Skywalker, and that even though she's dead, she had been dead, and now the dead are speaking now because she is back to life. So
look at the opening crawl speaks no lies. Exactly.
Yeah, even a broken clock is right twice a day.
Do you think that like when JJ put pen to paper on this, like that he thought of that Anakin stuff, or is it just something we pull out of it potentially?
I'm gonna say no
to the whole,
because I feel like if he had, it would have been more like, see. Like there would have been some connect. There would have been more of a holding the audience's hand, but who knows?
Yeah.
Do you think JJ knows the tale of Darth Plagueis?
Does he have a herd? I
just can't imagine he sat down and watched all the prequels before making this movie. I
think they probably did. They probably did like one a day, like of all the old movies.
You think he did? You think he?
I think like in a theater, they had got like a screening room at Lucasfilm, and they just sat and watched one a day with him and Kathy Kennedy and a couple of other people. Maybe like Pablo or somebody from Story Group, just to be like, if they're like, wait a minute, what's that thing? And somebody can be like, that's actually a Nebulon class frigate. And like, oh, okay.
And they're like, JJ, now we'll show you episodes 1, 2, and 3, aka the What Not to Do trilogy.
Right, yeah.
Prepare.
I think I'm going to say between the language of film not indicating that she is pregnant, I think he's supposed to be sacrificing his life to save her. I think that's the extent of the. I feel like the Anakin stuff was not didn't think because the Anakin stuff only works if she's pregnant. Because if she's not pregnant, then it's just bringing her back to life with no connection to Shmi or any of that, stuff. It is still bringing him back to life.
To Greg's point, though, he's solving the mystery that Anakin couldn't, of bringing somebody back to life in the way that Anakin, the only way that Anakin, could have, but didn't, because it didn't work that way.
It's one of the few metatextual things that I found interesting about Rise of Skywalker, but again, like as we've talked about many times before, it is the Star Wars hardcore fandom injecting that into the situation versus the situation existing to serve that purpose.
Right.
I guess we'll find out in the movie if she has another little she has a little tussle-haired lad.
Oh, you mean in the upcoming? I thought you meant in this movie. I was like, I don't know. There's only a couple minutes left. I don't think we're gonna.
I don't think so. Okay. Well, we can look for, although we can look for indicators that if she, you know what I mean, other clues that she might, whether or not she's with child or not.
Right, with child and I, starring Grand Admiral Bride,
Richard Grant. Yeah.
I have one more question.
Okay.
Greg, did you come up with a movie to replace with the Muppets? Remake with the Muppets, except for one human?
Yeah.
What is your movie?
Well, I can't
who's the human
remake.
That will be.
So I can't remake it because the human that I wanted is dead. So let's just pretend that they made the movie at the time.
Yeah. Sure.
The only answer is Boogie Nights, and the human is Burt Reynolds.
That's a good one.
My vote was going to be for Goodfellas, and the only human would be Paulie, the head of the crime,
Paul
head of the crime family. Paul Sorvino. Yeah,
and he's just ordering out a bunch of Muppets to do crimes.
Yeah, totally.
Well,
it would be funny seeing him shoved into an oven.
Who's Pesci? Like, is Gonzo Pesci? Like, who plays Pesci?
You could like Pepe the Prawn. Pepe the Prawn would be a little. I don't know how new you want to borrow from, but he has that kind of like little bit of that attitude. New.
I think
like
he's
he's
the
30
one
years
from
old.
that
But
for the Jason Segel movie, the main guy in the Jason Segel Muppet movie. That guy.
I'd actually go Kermit as De Niro and Fozzie as Leota. I know that the predisposition would probably be have Kermit play the lead, which is obviously Leota. But I think Fozzie as Leota works pretty good too.
Yeah. I'm picturing, because Fozzie could be like more nervous, like looking out the window at the helicopter, like, oh,
the helicopter.
Yeah, I'm
also in the "Am I a Clown to You" scene, having Fozzie be the one having that conversation with whoever is our Pesci proxy, I think is pretty good too.
But if Kermit is, that gets Miss Piggy in as Karen. You know what I mean? If you have Kermit as Henry Hill, and then you have Miss Piggy as Karen. Kermit with the gun in her face. No, she has the gun in his face, right? So anyway,
similarly, I was like, who are the in Boogie Nights? Who's who in that? I guess. Your main two, your Mark Wahlberg and your John C. Reilly are Kermit and Fozzie, but then beyond that,
absolutely, yep. Yeah. Then we need Miss Piggy would be Julianne Moore, and then we just need someone else to be. I mean, what is Janice?
Janice would be Roller Girl. Yeah. I guess that makes sense.
Yeah, they added more Lady Muppets. They must have added more Lady Muppets since then.
I think so.
Sam Eagle is what's his face? William H. Macy. Actually no, Sam Eagle should be what's his face? The guy who played Mr. Bookman on Seinfeld, and that was in a Talented Mr. Ripley.
Right.
That guy. That guy should be Sam Eagle. Yeah.
Yeah, he totally should. I like this idea.
All these Boogie Nights one
Pete,
works.
Pete, did you want to come up with a movie that should be replaced by the Muppets?
Just to subvert expectations and to keep it on brand, I was going to say we should redo the Phantom Menace, and Ahmed Best as Jar Jar Binks is the only human. Everybody else is a Muppet.
Is he Inhuman, or is he wearing the hat?
No, he's
and the
Inhuman.
Suit?
Yeah, I like the idea of the hat and the suit and all that, but he's just like as a human, maybe.
So what's the rest of the cast? Who's Kermit?
Kermit's got to be your. I mean, Obi-Wan is essentially I don't know, but Qui-Gon is kind of
Kermit's Obi-Wan, and then that who was it? What was it? Robin, his little cousin.
Anakin.
Yeah.
Right.
So who's Qui-Gon then?
Who's Qui-Gon?
Fozzie? Fozzie is Dexter.
Well, he's not in the Phantom Menace, remember?
It's true, yeah.
Gonzo Watto.
Boss Nass is Fozzie.
Boss Nass is Fozzie. Well, Sam the Eagle could also be a good Boss Nass, because he was like, grumpy and... Oh, but he doesn't have that love. Maybe Sweetums.
Oh, who's the Emperor in it?
Oh, yeah.
Gonzo. The bad guy. Gonzo is Dark Nation.
I like Gonzo as Watto, though. Who's that? Uncle Creepy or whatever.
Yeah, that's a good point.
Remember that? There's that really scary Muppet who's like a vulture, almost like a Skeksis, but not. But he's like
a dragony looking guy.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, but if you have Gonzo as Watto, then he's out the first. He's out the first. Like, you should for somebody has to be Yoda. Obviously, like a Frank Oz character has to be Yoda.
Oh, yeah,
it's Piggy. Then you just find someone else with Padme.
And the Trade Federation should be Bert and Ernie in a cameo appearance.
From a different. Although I do like the idea of them being Stadler.
There's two of them.
Stadler and Waldorf.
Getting out of hand.
That's the Trade Federation. I do like the idea of Stadler and Waldorf as the Trade Federation too. So it's like two of them being
Yeah.
And of course, Darth Maul will be played by New Zealand. So.
I want to cast Muppet movies all day long.
Well, we can't. We got to talk more about Star Wars at some point. But obviously, since we're talking about Muppets, we wrapped up our material for this minute long ago. Greg, can you do one more? Oh, please. Is it Muppet related?
Daisy Ridley, good dead face. I've often thought about if I was an actor or actress, how difficult it would be to do dead face with your eyes open. I bet I could do it eyes closed, because we've all pretended to be asleep, going back to our days where we used to fake sickness to get out of going to school. But being dead with your eyes open, I think, is a pretty tough gig, and I thought you did a good job.
Yeah. It's always CGI. Yeah, that's all I'm always like. Now I don't trust anything, so I'm always just like, is that CGI? Did they move her eyes like with? But
I think Adam Driver was just holding a bunch of tennis balls,
right. And the whole thing was just
they
weren't even in the same room, ever. Yes, I'll give her the benefit of the doubt. I agree. I noticed that too. That she does a good job of not looking alive when she's not supposed to be. Can you, Greg, come back for one more of these minutes? I think a little bit more stuff happens tomorrow.
Look,
I have a lot more notes for tomorrow.
Yeah, there's a lot more going on tomorrow.
I'm famous for coming on Star Wars Minute for moments of death. It's been my gimmick throughout the years. I think it's only fair that I come back for a moment of life.
It's a nice closure on the whole thing.
So it's a circle of life. Well, if you want to come back tomorrow, we are pretty much closed up shop with 8 Day Greedo by now. There's not a lot of movie left to talk about, but don't delete that number from your phone yet. We might do we might do some call-in stuff later on. We might do some. But you want a slower way to communicate with us? You want to send us a letter? Hey, send us a package. Send us stuff, physical things. We like physical things. Why not send them to Star Wars Minute?
My favorite things are physical.
Yeah, most of my favorite things. Well, the best things in life aren't free, but sometimes they're physical. Let's get physical stuff in our mailbox at P.O. Box 20139, Greedo Square Station, New York, 10001.
And if you're part of a dyad with Pete, make sure you send him, something special. He says he's open to it.
Twizzlers. And we will be back tomorrow with a brand new episode of Star Wars Minute.
Star Wars Minute.
Star Wars Minute.